Minnesota lawmakers went back to work this week at the state capitol in St. Paul. With the budget already set last year, lawmakers will be working on other issues in the second year of the session. Well, a state bonding bill is expected to be high on the list of priorities, and both parties are pushing bills to bring down the cost of insulin. Lawmakers from around the region are here tonight to talk about topics near and dear to them. Representative Sandy Lehman is a Republican from Cohasset in Itasca County. Representative Mike Sundin is a Democrat from Esco in Carlton County. And Representative Julie Sandsted is a DFLer from Hibbing in St. Louis County. And thanks to all of you for being here. Well, big budget surplus, Sandy. What's the state going to do with that money?
Yeah, well, that's one of the questions, of course. Last session, 2019, we passed the two-year budget, and I think we did a pretty good job because we are still running a surplus. And so it's about a $1.3 billion surplus. And it's not exactly that because inflation's not factored in and things like that. And then some of the money goes to replenish the reserves. But after that, we still do have a surplus. And I think what we should do with the surplus, in my opinion, is that we ought to start providing more tax relief. Since I've been in the legislature, we've been doing that little by little by little in a couple of areas. Each session, we've been able to shave off a little bit of the Social Security income tax for people who collect Social Security checks. They shouldn't have to pay income tax, I don't think, on those checks. And so we're doing our best to eventually do away with that. And I'd like to keep going down that path.
Are you getting agreement from the Democrats?
Well, let's ask.
Certainly, some tax relief would be welcome for most of the homeowners in the state of Minnesota. The homeowners are taxed for townships and schools and a number of other purposes, and a little of tax relief for the homeowners would be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Julie?
Talking taxes is always fine, but the surplus is really one-time money. So whatever we're going to do with it, it has to be a one-and-done situation. I think looking at early childhood education, child care investments, or even maybe giving some money back to our counties for the hit that they took a couple years ago would be a great use of one-time money.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as the Democrats' real priorities heading into this session?
For me, I would say, again, we're looking at our youngest in the state. That's going to be a priority. In terms of the surplus, it would be finding appropriate uses, again, on a one-time basis. So when you're looking at tax relief, you know, especially on Social Security taxes, I don't know that that fits into that picture. And I would say the insulin is going to be a huge,
that's a biggie.
Getting that accomplished, getting that done, because right now, really, there was agreement between Democrats and Republicans in concept for sure. Mm-hmm. How we're going to solve it, we're not sure, but we both agree this has to get done. And right now, it's on the backs of, you know, people who are sick.
Sure. So can the legislature really do anything about that?
Well, they've been certainly talking about it for a very long time. We started talking about it in the last session, talked about it throughout the summer. And then most recently, coming into this session, there was a task force that met, I don't know, a dozen times. And what we found out a lot from that task force. One of the things we have to be careful about is when we have a problem like cost of insulin is not to just immediately throw money at the entire population of people who have diabetes, because not everybody's having the same problem. And then in the interim, since last session, the health insurance companies have actually stepped up to the plate, and if you're covered under one of the major plans right now, you have low to no cost out of pocket because they have significantly reduced that cost. If you're on Medicare, it's the same thing. There's a few people who are on Medicare and fall into that donut hole, and a couple of others that still have a problem. So we want to help those people. And as Julie said, we both have bills. In the House there's a bill, in the Senate there's a bill. I think the big difference between the two is who pays. And I think in the House, the desire is to have a fee applied to the manufacturers, whereas the Senate, they would prefer not to have a fee, but have the manufacturers provide the insulin at no cost to those who need it.
Are you pretty confident that the two sides will come together and that some solution will be reached?
Certainly, there's consensus in both houses that, that this should happen, and I think we can make it happen. I'm certain we can make it happen. What it's going to look like, the final product, we don't know at this point, but we're compelled by the will of the people to do something, and we will.
Of course, it's a bonding year, and the two sides are pretty far apart in terms of the size of a bonding bill. Where do you think things will land in terms of both dollar amount and the types of projects that will get attention this year?
I think the dollar amount is undetermined at this point. I'm really hopeful it's going to be higher than some artificial cap of $1 billion or something like that. Right now, the state had almost $5.6 billion with a B being requested across communities.
The governor wants $2.6 billion.
Correct. That was his proposal. If we land around 2, I'm all for 2.6, especially with our AAA rating, with the capacity to do it with interest rates low and with the needs so high. In our communities, all three of us that we represent, if we don't have the state's help, these are projects that will never get off the ground. I think we have arsenic in, the water in Sundine's district. We've got big issues that we're dealing with. And I think we're going to see a lot of water infrastructure, roads, bridges, capital preservation type of things, asset preservation.
Right. I certainly hope so. We have to keep in mind that Minnesota, out of all the 50 states, we're number 5 for miles of state-maintained roads. So we have a huge responsibility in a less populated state, and we need to maintain that infrastructure. Our basic duty as legislators is to provide uniform education opportunities for our children and roads for commerce. Everything else on top of that, it's great, but those are our 2 major responsibilities.
I'm on the bonding committee, the capital investment committee, as is Julie, and spent 17 days going around the state this past fall looking at projects, and there are many projects. This week in our capital investment committee, we heard from some of the commissioners, like the DNR, and she's talking about, Commissioner Strawman's talking about the DNR has buildings in every single county across the state. Well, just repairing and keeping those buildings, functioning and safe is hundreds of millions of dollars. So you take that across all the agencies, and that alone, makes for quite a bill. I have to say, Representative Mary Murphy is the chair of the Capital Investment Committee in the House, and at our meeting this week, she threw out a challenge that she would like to see a bonding bill done before we leave on Easter break. Well, that has never happened, but that's a very aggressive goal.
Senate Minority Leader Tom Bach lost his position here a couple of weeks ago. What's that going to mean for northeastern Minnesota? Any of you?
I think it's a big loss.
Certainly.
I think it's a huge loss. I've worked with first Representative Bach and then Senator Bach for years, and he's been sort of the lead legislator from the Iron Range, and he ran for governor, and he has been the leader in the Senate. He has a lot of knowledge, and he has a real heart for northern Minnesota. So I think we're all going to feel a loss.
Do you echo that?
I would. I actually worked with Tom Bach back in the 80s out in the construction world, and I saw him as a strong leader leading construction crews. And those leadership traits followed him into the legislature, and it's been a boon for northern Minnesota. If you take a look at all the projects that he's completed in northern Minnesota and elsewhere, and he's got his favorite things to do. He's an outdoorsman, and to expand the opportunity for people to enjoy northern Minnesota has always been a priority of his. And it might be a step back for a little bit, but he's not giving up. He's going to stick around and do the job.
What are the specific priorities, going back to the bonding bill, for your districts and the people that you represent? What are you really going to be fighting for down in St. Paul?
Well, I've got a couple of projects that I've had for some time. One is a wastewater project in Deer River. The little city of Deer River cannot add a single housing development or business until they expand their wastewater treatment. And so we need to put more money into wastewater. And then the Grand Rapids has one of those great old civic centers, ice arenas, that is failing. The roof truss system is failing. And if it's, the snow we've had this winter, when it snows like that, they actually have to send somebody up with a shovel and shovel the snow, or nobody can use the building. So we're looking for a little bit of money, $5 million, to help offset that cost. And then in Cohasset, we have an opportunity to take over an old industrial site and turn it into a nice riverfront on the Mississippi River, and we're looking for some bonding money to do the public part of that.
Representative Sundin?
There's no shortage of projects out there that are someone's priority. I've got a couple. One in my district exclusively is a water line that extends from Carlton out to the I-35 corridor. And it's an economic development project, and it's a health issue out there too. It's really terrible water out there. And we're working hard on that, and I hopefully we're there this year. But important is, another one is as important as that is the WLSSD energy project that they're involved in. There's 3 generators that they want to purchase to burn the methane gases that are produced at that facility to generate their own electricity. That's about 1/3 of their operating costs. And if we can accomplish that for the WLSSD system, that benefit extends from 2 harbors all the way to Renshaw.
We've got
into
about
Coquet.
45 seconds.
So I've got several wastewater treatment issues in the city of Floodwood, in Nashua, Keewatin. Hibbing is looking at doing a mine view in the sky. That's a local project. That's kind of a one in the nation. But I think one of the biggest ones on the range is going to be looking at pit water levels. There's a couple of pits across the Iron Range that are at dangerously high levels that are either looking at contaminating drinking sources or really flooding out entire communities. It's a safety issue. So those have been my priority in the past, and they're going to continue to be my priority.
Boy, I wish we had a whole lot more time tonight. We just don't. It's television.
okay.
We run out of time. Thank you all for being here
you.
tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.